Part 1. The Discarded One. The massive space station called Dragon's Peak floated in the darkness like a glowing jewel. Inside its crystal halls, the most powerful dragon warriors in the galaxy trained and lived. Tonight was special. 5 dragon eggs were about to hatch in the royal chambers. Elder Karath watched as cracks appeared on the silvery shells. One by one, 4 baby dragons broke free. Their scales shone bright red like burning flames, and their eyes glowed fierce yellow. They roared tiny roars that echoed through the chamber, showing their strength from the very first breath. But the 5th egg was different. When it finally cracked open, out came a baby dragon that made everyone gasp, but not in a good way. His scales were dull brown instead of brilliant red. He was small, maybe half the size of his brothers and sisters. His eyes were gentle green instead of the fierce yellow that dragons were supposed to have. "What is this?" Elder Karatha's voice boomed through the chamber. The other dragon elders gathered around, shaking their massive heads in disappointment. "This creature brings shame to our bloodline," declared Elder Vex, his red scales rippling with anger. "Look at it, weak, small, wrong colors. This is not a true dragon." The tiny hatchling looked up at them with confused, innocent eyes. He made soft chirping sounds, trying to get their attention, trying to find warmth and comfort like any newborn would. But instead of love, he found only cold stares and harsh words. "The clan laws are clear," Elder Karath announced. "Weakness cannot be allowed to spread. This thing must be removed before it contaminates the others." Without any ceremony or second thoughts, they scooped up the baby dragon and carried him through the station's corridors. The little one cried out, not understanding why he was being taken away from his family. His small voice echoed sadly through the metal hallways. They reached the waste disposal area, a dark, dirty place where garbage was processed and recycled. This was where only the lowest workers came, people the proud dragons barely noticed. With no emotion at all, they dropped the baby dragon into the disposal chute. "Let nature take its course," Elder Karath said coldly. "If he survives, perhaps he was meant to live. If not, then we have saved the clan from future embarrassment." The baby dragon tumbled down through dark tubes and landed in a pile of scrap metal and food waste. His tiny body was bruised and scared. He cried out for his mother, for anyone who might care, but only silence answered back. Hours passed. The little dragon grew weaker and colder. He had never eaten real food before. Dragon babies needed special milk and care for their first weeks of life. Without it, he would not last long. Meanwhile, in the lower levels of the station, a man named Tyler Brooks was starting his night shift. Tyler was 32 years old, with kind dark eyes and gentle hands that had fixed 1,000 broken things. He worked as a maintenance worker, cleaning and repairing the parts of the station that kept everything running. The dragons barely knew he existed. Tyler had been doing this job for 4 years. He knew every corner, every pipe, every hidden space in the lower levels. He took pride in his work, even though nobody ever thanked him for it. Tonight felt like any other night as he pushed his cleaning cart through the dimly lit corridors. That's when he heard it, a weak, pitiful crying sound coming from the waste processing area. At first, he thought it might be a broken machine making strange noises. But as he got closer, he realized it sounded like something alive, something in pain. Tyler followed the sound through the maze of pipes and machinery. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness until it landed on something that made his heart stop. There, shivering in a pile of garbage, was the tiniest dragon he had ever seen. "Oh my God," Tyler whispered, dropping to his knees. "What are you doing down here, little guy?" The baby dragon looked up at him with tired, frightened eyes. His brown scales were covered in grime, and his small body shook from cold and hunger. But when he saw Tyler's gentle face, something changed. He stopped crying and made a soft, hopeful sound. Tyler looked around quickly to make sure he was alone. He knew the dragon's laws. They didn't like humans interfering in their business. But looking at this tiny, abandoned creature, Tyler couldn't just walk away. "Don't worry, buddy," he said softly, carefully picking up the baby dragon. "I've got you now. You're safe." The little dragon curled up against Tyler's warm chest, finally feeling secure for the first time in his short life. He didn't know that this moment would change everything, not just for him but for the entire relationship between dragons and humans in the galaxy. Tyler carefully smuggled the tiny dragon back to his small living quarters in the human worker section of the station. His room was nothing fancy, just a bed, a small kitchen area, and a desk where he kept repair manuals. But it was warm and safe, which was exactly what the baby dragon needed right now. The little creature was so weak he could barely lift his head. Tyler knew he had to act fast. Using his maintenance access codes, he snuck into the station's medical database and researched everything he could find about dragon biology. Most of the information was restricted, but Tyler had learned a few tricks over the years about getting around security systems. "Okay, little guy, let's see what we can do," Tyler whispered as he mixed together a formula using ingredients from the food synthesizers. The baby dragon was so hungry that he drank eagerly from the makeshift bottle Tyler created from maintenance supplies. Tyler decided to call him Rusty because of his unique brown scales that reminded him of old copper pipes. It seemed like a fitting name for a dragon living in the maintenance levels. Night after night, Tyler fed Rusty and watched him grow stronger. The dragon's personality began to shine through. He was curious about everything, always trying to explore Tyler's small room despite his wobbly legs. He would chirp happily when Tyler came home from work and curl up next to him while he slept. Teaching Rusty to talk was an adventure in itself. Tyler started with simple words, pointing to objects and repeating their names. To his amazement, Rusty learned incredibly fast. Within a few weeks, the young dragon was forming complete sentences, though his voice was still high and squeaky like a child's. "Tyler, what is this?" Rusty asked one day, pointing at a wrench with his tiny claw. "That's a tool I use to fix things," Tyler explained patiently. "When something is broken, sometimes all it needs is the right tool and someone who cares enough to fix it." Rusty thought about this for a moment. "Like how you fixed me?" Tyler smiled and gently scratched behind Rusty's head where he liked it most. "You weren't broken, buddy. You were just lost. Sometimes that happens to the best of us." As Rusty grew bigger, though still much smaller than dragons his age should be, Tyler taught him about more than just survival. He showed him how to read using old technical manuals, explaining how the station systems worked. Rusty soaked up knowledge like a sponge, asking endless questions about everything from gravity generators to waste recycling. But the most important lessons weren't about technology. Tyler taught Rusty about kindness, about treating everyone with respect regardless of their job or species. He showed him that being different didn't mean being wrong, and that real strength came from helping others, not dominating them. "Up in the dragon levels," Tyler explained one evening as they shared dinner, "they believe that might makes right. The biggest and strongest dragons get to make all the rules. But down here, we know that's not how the world really works." "How does it work then?" Rusty asked, his green eyes wide with curiosity. "Well, see that water recycling unit over there? It was built by humans, maintained by humans, and keeps everyone on this station alive, dragons included. But most of them never think about it. They just assume it works by magic or something." Rusty nodded thoughtfully. "So the people they ignore are actually the ones keeping them alive?" "Smart kid," Tyler grinned. "That's exactly right." During the day while Tyler worked, Rusty would hide in the maintenance tunnels, exploring and learning. He discovered he could fit through spaces that even humans couldn't reach, and his keen senses could detect problems with machinery before they became serious. Soon he was actually helping Tyler with repairs, using his small size and natural intelligence to solve problems in creative ways. One day Tyler's friend Devin stopped by. Devin worked in the station's computer systems, and he was one of the few humans who knew about Rusty's existence. "You know this can't stay secret forever," Devin warned quietly while Rusty played with some spare circuit boards. "The dragons have sensors everywhere. Eventually, someone's going to notice." Tyler watched Rusty carefully arranging the circuits into patterns, his small mind always working on some new puzzle. "I know. But look at him, Def. He's brilliant, he's kind, and he's already more useful than half the dragon warriors upstairs. When they find out, and you're right, maybe they'll see what I see." Devin shook his head. "Tyler, you're a good man, but you're being naive. Dragons don't change their minds about things like this. When they threw him away, they made their decision final." "Then maybe it's time someone showed them they were wrong," Tyler replied firmly. As months passed, the bond between Tyler and Rusty grew stronger. They weren't just human and dragon sharing a living space, they had become a real family. Rusty called Tyler Dad without even thinking about it, and Tyler felt a fierce protective love for the young dragon that surprised him with its intensity. But in the back of his mind, Tyler knew their peaceful life couldn't last forever. The dragon clans had rules, and those rules didn't include exceptions for abandoned hatchlings who had grown up with humans. The reckoning was coming whether they were ready for it or not. 2 years had passed since Tyler found Rusty in that pile of garbage. The young dragon had grown to about the size of a large dog, though he should have been much bigger by dragon standards. His brown scales had developed a beautiful bronze sheen, and his green eyes sparkled with intelligence that impressed everyone who met him. Tyler had done his best to keep Rusty's existence secret, But on a space station full of advanced sensors and security cameras, nothing stayed hidden forever. The first sign of trouble came during Tyler's regular maintenance rounds when he noticed new surveillance equipment being installed in the lower levels. "They're looking for something," Devin warned him during one of their secret meetings. "Command has been asking questions about energy readings and unusual activity in the waste processing areas." Tyler felt his stomach drop. "How long do we have?" "Not long. Maybe a few days, maybe less." That night, Tyler sat with Rusty in their small quarters, trying to figure out what to do. Rusty had grown so much, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. He could solve complex engineering problems, spoke 3 different languages, and had a kindness that Tyler had never seen in any of the adult dragons on the station. "Dad, you look worried," Rusty said, looking up from the book he was reading about quantum mechanics. "Is everything okay?" Tyler took a deep breath. "Rusty, we need to talk about something important. You know how I've always told you that your birth family might come looking for you someday?" Rusty's expression grew serious. "The dragons who threw me away? What about them?" "I think they've found out you're alive. They might come here soon." For a moment, Rusty was quiet. Then he moved closer to Tyler and put his small clawed hand on his arm. "Whatever happens, you're my real family. You saved me, you raised me, you taught me everything important. That's not going to change." The next morning, Tyler was running diagnostics on the main power grid when the alarms started blaring. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the corridors, and automated voices announced that all human workers should report to their supervisors immediately. Tyler's blood ran cold. This was it. Heavy footsteps echoed through the maintenance tunnels, footsteps too big and too heavy to belong to any human. Tyler quickly sent a message to Devin, "Take care of him if something happens to me." Then he made his way back toward his quarters, hoping to reach Rusty before the dragons did. But he was too late. Standing in the corridor outside his room was the most massive dragon Tyler had ever seen. Commander Vex stood nearly 12 feet tall, his red scales gleaming like polished armor. His yellow eyes burned with fury as he stared down at Tyler. "You," the dragon's voice boomed through the narrow hallway. "You are the human who interfered with clan justice." Tyler stood his ground, though his heart was pounding. "I'm Tyler Brooks, maintenance worker. Is there a problem, Commander? Do not play games with me, human. We know what you have done. We know you took something that did not belong to you." At that moment, Rusty appeared in the doorway behind Commander Vex. The young dragon looked tiny compared to his biological father, but his voice was steady and clear. "He didn't take anything," Rusty said calmly. "He saved someone you threw away to die." Commander Vex spun around, and for a moment, Tyler saw something flicker in the dragon's eyes, surprise, maybe even recognition. But it quickly turned back to cold anger. "You should have died with honor instead of living in shame," Vex snarled. "Look at yourself, weak, small, contaminated by association with lesser beings." "Lesser beings?" Rusty stepped forward, and Tyler was amazed by the courage in such a small creature. "Tyler Brooks has more honor in his little finger than your entire clan showed me in my whole life. He feeds the hungry, fixes what's broken, and protects those who can't protect themselves. What have you done lately besides sit in your golden halls and judge others?" The corridor fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Other dragons had gathered behind Commander Vex, members of the ruling council who had come to witness this confrontation. Tyler noticed some human workers peering around corners, including Devin, who looked ready to help if needed. "You dare lecture me about honor?" Commander Vex's voice rose to a roar. "I am your blood father. I am a warrior who has conquered star systems. You are nothing but a mistake that should have been corrected years ago." "Then correct it," Rusty said quietly. Tyler's heart almost stopped, but Rusty continued. "Challenge me. Test me. Let's see which one of us really understands what strength means." Commander Vex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You think your human pet has taught you to be a warrior? Very well. But when you fail, and you will fail, both of you will face the consequences of defying clan law." Tyler wanted to protest, to protect Rusty from whatever test the dragons had in mind. But he saw the determination in the young dragon's green eyes and realized this moment had been coming for 2 years. Rusty had been preparing for it without even knowing. The challenge was set. Whatever happened next would determine not just their fate, but possibly the future relationship between humans and dragons throughout the galaxy. As alarms suddenly began blaring again, this time warning of incoming ships, Tyler realized they were about to get their chance to prove what real strength looked like. The emergency alarms that interrupted Commander Vex and Rusty's confrontation weren't false alerts. Through the station's massive viewing windows, everyone could see them, thousands of dark ships emerging from hyperspace like angry hornets pouring from a disturbed nest. What are those things? Tyler asked, staring at the twisted, organic-looking vessels that seemed to pulse with their own evil light. Devon appeared beside him, his face pale as he read from his handheld scanner. The computers are calling them devourers. They're some kind of biomechanical species that feeds on metal and energy. And Tyler, there are more of them than I can count. Commander Vex's attention immediately shifted from Rusty to the incoming threat. All Dragon warriors to battle stations, he commanded into his communication device. Launch all squadrons immediately. Within minutes, the space around Dragon's Peak became a war zone. Hundreds of Dragon fighters poured out of the station's launch bays, their sleek ships gleaming like jewels against the darkness. The sight was magnificent. Dragon warriors had been the galaxy's most feared fighters for thousands of years. Tyler watched from the observation deck as the Dragon fleet engaged the enemy. Brilliant streams of plasma fire lit up space as the Dragons attacked with their traditional weapons. Massive flame cannons, energy blasters, and heat-seeking missiles struck the Devourer ships in spectacular explosions. For a moment, it looked like the Dragons would win easily. Their superior technology and warrior training seemed to be working perfectly. But then something terrible happened. The Devourer ships that had been destroyed began to rebuild themselves. Their hulls shifted and changed, adapting to every weapon the Dragons used against them. Ships that had been torn apart by plasma fire reformed with new armor that reflected the same attacks back at their attackers. They're learning, Devon whispered in horror. Every time the Dragons hit them with something, they become immune to it. The tide of battle turned quickly. Dragon ships that had been winning moments before suddenly found their weapons useless. The Devourers pressed their advantage, swarming over the Dragon fighters like predators taking down prey. One by one, the proud Dragon dreadnoughts began to fall. Tyler could hear the desperate radio calls echoing through the station's communication systems, Dragon pilots calling for help, reporting that their weapons had stopped working, screaming final messages before their ships were consumed. Commander Vex stood in the command center, his massive frame rigid with fury and disbelief. "How is this possible?" he roared. "We are the strongest warriors in the galaxy. Our weapons have conquered 1,000 worlds." "Your strength isn't working," Rusty said quietly from where he stood next to Tyler. The young Dragon had been watching the battle with intense concentration, his brilliant mind analyzing every detail. "Silence," Vex snapped. "You know nothing of warfare, Hatchling." But Rusty ignored the insult and continued thinking out loud. "Dad, you always told me that when something is broken, sometimes you need different tools to fix it. What if the Dragons are using the wrong tools for this fight?" Tyler looked at his adopted son with growing understanding. "What are you thinking, buddy?" Rusty's green eyes lit up with excitement as the pieces of a plan began forming in his mind. The Devourers adapt to energy weapons, right? But what about something they've never seen before? What about using the station itself as a weapon? Devon overheard and moved closer. "What do you mean?" "The waste processing system," Rusty explained, his voice getting faster as his excitement grew. "It uses massive electromagnetic pulses to break down metal and organic matter. What if we could amplify those pulses and direct them at the enemy ships?" The human technicians in the command center began paying attention. They had been largely ignored during the crisis, but now they gathered around Rusty as he outlined his idea. "The kid's right," said Luna Martinez, the chief human engineer. "We could theoretically overload the processing system and create an electromagnetic pulse big enough to disable their entire fleet." Commander Vex turned toward them, his expression skeptical. "You expect me to trust the fate of this station to a defective hatchling and a handful of maintenance workers?" "Your way isn't working," Tyler said firmly, pointing at the tactical display where more Dragon ships were being destroyed every minute. "Maybe it's time to try something different." The station shuddered as Devourer boarding pods began attaching to the hull. Emergency reports flooded in, the outer defenses had been breached and alien creatures were cutting their way through the station's armor. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Brooks from the communication station, "we're receiving multiple breach alerts. They're inside the station." Through the corridors, they could hear the sound of combat as Dragon security forces engaged the invaders. But even the mighty Dragon warriors were struggling against enemies that adapted to their fighting styles in real time. Commander Vex looked at the tactical display, watching his forces get systematically destroyed. His pride warred with desperation as the reality of the situation became clear. The traditional Dragon way of warfare, relying on superior firepower and individual strength, was failing completely. In the distance, Explosions echoed through the station as more devourers broke through the defenses. Time was running out and everyone in the command center knew it. The proud dragon commander faced the hardest decision of his life: trust in the old ways that were failing, or listen to a small, rejected hatchling and the humans he had always considered beneath his notice. The sound of metal being torn apart echoed through the command center as devourer creatures broke through another section of the station. Commander Vex watched his tactical display with growing horror. Red warning lights showed breach after breach as the alien invaders carved their way deeper into Dragon's Peak. "Sir, we've lost contact with levels 7 through 12, reported Lieutenant Knox, his voice shaking. "The creatures are moving toward the main reactor core." Tyler felt Rusty press closer to his side. The young dragon was scared, but his mind was still working on the problem. "Dad, if they reach the reactor, everyone dies. We have to try the electromagnetic pulse now." Commander Vex turned toward them, his proud features twisted with anguish. For the first time in his life, the mighty dragon warrior looked truly defeated. His weapons had failed. His tactics had failed. Everything he believed about strength and power was crumbling around him. "You really think this insane plan could work?" he asked Tyler directly. Tyler met the dragon's burning gaze without flinching. "Commander, I've spent 4 years keeping the station running. I know every pipe, every circuit, every system better than anyone. If Rusty says we can turn the waste processing into a weapon, then we can do it." Another explosion shook the station. Through the speakers, they could hear the screams of dragon warriors being overwhelmed by creatures that adapted faster than they could fight. "Do it," Commander Vex said finally. The words seemed to physically hurt him. "Save my station. Save my people." Tyler and Rusty ran through the corridors toward the waste processing center, dodging falling debris in emergency teams. Devin and Luna followed close behind, carrying equipment they would need for the impossible modification. The processing center was chaos. Alarms blared as automated systems tried to handle the overload from battle damage. Massive electromagnetic coils hummed with dangerous energy, and the air crackled with static electricity. "Okay, buddy," Tyler said, pulling up the system controls. "Talk me through this." Rusty's small claws flew over the control panels with surprising skill. "We need to bypass the safety limiters and reverse the polarity on coils 7 through 15. That should create a cascading overload. That'll also probably destroy the entire processing system," Luna warned. "Better than being eaten by space bugs," Devin replied, already rewiring connection panels. Working together, the team began the dangerous modification. Tyler used his years of maintenance experience to reroute power flows. Rusty calculated the precise timing needed for maximum effect. Devin and Luna handled the technical programming while other human workers who had arrived provided extra hands and tools. But they weren't alone. Through the facility's entrance, 3 devourer creatures appeared, twisted biomechanical nightmares that looked like a horrible mix of insect and machine. Their metallic claws gleamed as they advanced, adapting their forms to match the electromagnetic environment around them. "Keep working," Tyler shouted. "I'll handle this." He grabbed a plasma cutter from his toolkit and faced the creatures. Tyler wasn't a warrior, he was just a maintenance worker who wanted to protect his family and friends. But sometimes ordinary people have to do extraordinary things. The first devourer lunged at him with razor-sharp claws. Tyler dodged and swung the plasma cutter, slicing through the creature's arm. But within seconds, the wounded limb began reforming with armor designed to resist plasma damage. "Dad, look out," Rusty called. Tyler spun around to see another creature approaching from behind. Before he could react, Rusty leaped forward despite his small size. The young dragon used his natural agility to confuse the creature, darting between its legs while Tyler struck at its exposed joints. "Almost got it," Devin yelled from the control station. 30 more seconds. The third devourer had adapted to their attacks and was now advancing steadily. Its hull had become reflective, bouncing their plasma attacks harmlessly away. Tyler and Rusty backed toward the control panels, running out of options. That's when Commander Vex arrived. The massive dragon burst through the facility entrance, his scales glowing with rage. But instead of using his traditional flame weapons, he did something unexpected. He picked up a heavy metal beam and swung it like a club, smashing the nearest devourer with pure physical force. "Sometimes," Vex growled as he fought, "the old ways are the best ways." The creatures tried to adapt to his physical attacks, but there was no technology to counter raw dragon strength applied creatively. Working together, the unlikely team held off the invaders long enough to complete their work. "Ready?" Luna announced. "Firing electromagnetic pulse in 3, 2, 1. The pulse erupted from Dragon's Peak like invisible lightning, racing through space at the speed of light. Every Devourer ship in the system went dark simultaneously. Their adaptive hulls, so effective against energy weapons, had no defense against an attack they had never encountered before. In the sudden silence that followed, Tyler collapsed against the control panel, exhausted. Rusty curled up next to him, both of them breathing hard from their first real battle. Commander Vex approached slowly. For a long moment, he stared at his small, brown-scaled son. Then, to everyone's amazement, the proud dragon lowered his massive head in a gesture of respect. "You saved us all," he said quietly. "A rejected hatchling and a maintenance worker succeeded where our greatest warriors failed." Rusty looked up at his biological father, then at Tyler. "I had good teachers," he said simply. In the days that followed, everything changed on Dragon's Peak. Humans were granted full citizenship and equal status within the Dragon hierarchy. Tyler was appointed as the first human advisor to the Dragon High Command, while Rusty became a bridge between the two species. The young dragon never grew to be physically large, but he became something much more important, a symbol that strength comes in many forms, and that family is defined not by blood or species, but by love, loyalty, and the willingness to stand together when times get tough. And sometimes, late at night, Tyler and his adopted son would sit in their new larger quarters, watching the stars and remembering the day they learned that the greatest victories come not from conquering others, but from bringing different people together to solve problems that none of them could handle alone.